All right, hello. Just wanted to show you guys my collages so far and kind of my thinking process working through the images that I picked out and how I'm trying to place them together. So sometimes it can be kind of overwhelming when you have so many images to pick from. So what I found is find the find the few that you want to start with. Typically, you can find smaller things to kind of fill in spaces. So look for bigger images just to kind of get you started. So you have a little bit more of an idea of how you want to lay it out. Again, like patterns and textures and that kind of stuff can be kind of figured out after, or like when you add in the other art media. But think about like the big objects. What's your focus? What's your emphasis, right? So I know I talked to you guys, I showed you guys some of these this morning, but I was thinking about background. And this one in particular, where I was using this group of people who were kneeling down, I thought was kind of a strange image to pull out of um, context. So it was a church scene. They're probably singing at church for I don't know. But I thought it'd be interesting to pull that image out and place it in a different context, creating a different story, different narrative. So I had these guys and this woman that was making this weird crouching gesture. And so I thought, it looks like she's looking right at them. So I just figured I'd kind of play around with that idea, just kind of seeing what I could do with it. And then I was thinking about, well, what can I put in the background? And my first thought was a horizon line. So something that would separate the sky and the ground, whether that would be like a landscape or is it a table? Is it, looking for something that I can kind of place this woman on, especially since she has a flat bottom. I wanted to either have her look like she was behind something or something that could look like it extends her body. And I found that this little square here on this old Mariner map fit her skirt perfectly. So I just decided to go with that. I'm probably going to extend it and draw back into this and create something to kind of make that feel unified. So I placed the people here along this compass just because that happened to be there. And it looks like she is speaking to them directly. And I just kind of liked how that worked out. So I actually cut that whole Mariner map in half and I placed it on my sheet. So this whole map is going to be the start of my background. So just kind of giving you guys an idea of how you can work a background into your image so you don't feel so lost having to create the whole background if you are not interested in doing that. So you can take a whole page of something and use that as your background or at least a jumping off point. So I took the rest of that map and I tore it into strips. One way you can do that is to take a ruler and place it on the paper and kind of tear it like a tear bar. And you get these nice kind of straight lines. This paper is really old, so it's got this kind of rough edge, which I actually kind of enjoy. And what I want to do with this was I was kind of playing around with like textures and layering and how that looks visually. So I kind of wanted to build up texture along the bottom here. So I'm just kind of lining these up as I go. Get this out of the way here. And I'm kind of digging how this is looking. So I'm repeating this pattern of kind of textured lines. So building up texture, building up layers. Just as experimentation. There's no real purpose behind it other than I like the way it looks. And I could probably come back with this one. I don't know if I like that though. I'll probably just leave that one out and put these guys back on the compass. So this is kind of where I'm going with this one. I really enjoy that texture. I like how the light hits it. I like how it kind of adds to the foreground. We've got the foreground. These guys are kind of in the middle ground. And then we've got our background. That's kind of how I'm looking at this collage on its own. So moving on to another one, I started to really enjoy kind of tearing those straight lines and kind of thinking about line and direction. So I had this butterfly picture. It was the monarchs in Mexico that, they all migrate to Mexico in the wintertime, and it's just like this mass of monarch butterflies. So I decided to I love the texture of it. I loved how it looks more like a texture before you even recognize it as butterflies. And I wanted to see what would happen if I cut these into lines and kind of just use them as line, texture, movement, and just kind of lining them up and seeing what happens. And I ended up kind of liking how this looked, and I was going to continue to tear the lines until I placed this next to it before I continued to tear it up. And I actually kind of like how it looks where like it's not entirely lines all the way across. So I decided to stop there. I'm going to trim this off and figure out what I want to do with this. Another option to think about too, and I was thinking about this and how I could maybe bring in a different color or texture, is paper weaving. So making a collage with paper, you can always weave paper too. So bring it under, over, under, over, under. So I would glue like the tips of these here, 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 so I could lift up those strips of paper and then weave this paper down and through it. So that's another thing you can kind of experiment with, is like, what other things can you do with the paper other than just gluing it flat? So weaving is another option if you're interested in that kind of imagery. And I also started thinking about bringing in other line patterns to kind of mimic what was going on with the lines that I cut. So yeah, still playing around with that one. It's still pretty much in the baby stage, but just kind of wanted to show you another thing I was thinking about. This guy I mentioned in class. Again, I just give him a funny hit. I first saw him as this picture, right? I wanted to remove him from his background. I kind of like the text. I hate to wait. How can I play around with the text and the silhouette, the empty silhouette, like he's already left? Do I want to put these in the same image? I love looking at silhouettes, the positive and the negatives together, and seeing how that creates a new image. Let's see if I can get this more viewable for you. So I was thinking about possibly doing this. It's kind of a yin and a yang thing. I love the black and the white. So I still haven't decided what I'm doing with this, but again, just kind of playing around with it, seeing what I can do with it, and remembering not to just cut out a piece and throw away the negative. The negative sometimes can be more interesting than the positive. This piece too, still working on it. Just like the little pieces, I love the colors, the textures. I'll see what I can do with that one. I'll keep you guys updated. And then this one I mentioned in class today too. It was originally a porthole in a ship. I decided to cut out the image that was on the inside, thinking I would add a new landscape on the other side of this, or some sort of like entering into a new world kind of idea. But I wasn't really, it wasn't really doing it for me. So I started kind of turning it around and just kind of looking at it in different ways. And I actually kind of liked looking at it like a helmet. So this is kind of the head of the figure and like maybe little antennas or something. Just wanted to kind of play around with different ideas. And then after watching that Ellen Gallagher episode, I really loved how she carved into the paper and created texture. So I took an X-Acto knife and started carving into that paper. So I'm going to grab an X-Acto knife. I'm going to show you guys how I carved into this paper and how you guys can do that. All right, so I grabbed an X-Acto knife. I do have these at school if you guys wanted one to work with. So this is watercolor paper. It's very thick, and that's why it's easy to carve into and pull away and still have you can see there's still paper underneath because it's so many layers of paper. You can kind of peel it away, and there's still, I'm not cutting holes into it necessarily. I'm just peeling the top layer away. All right, so real briefly, I'll just show you guys kind of how I was working on this. I'm going to do this carefully so I don't cut through my paper and onto the table. If you are going to do this, make sure you have a cutting board underneath or just an old piece of wood that you don't mind messing up with the blade, okay? Don't want to be cutting into your kitchen table. So all I'm doing is I am scoring the paper, which just means I'm cutting through the top surface. I'm not cutting all the way through. I am kind of just drawing with my blade. So I'm going to continue my pattern here that I have going on. And again, I'm not pushing all the way through. I'm just kind of breaking that top surface. If you do break all the way through, it's not a huge deal. You can still separate those layers of paper. But I do want it to be still remain one solid piece of paper, because then you risk the paper kind of falling apart on you. So you want to kind of keep your lines light. Enough pressure to get through that top layer of paper, but not too hard that you're making real cuts. Okay, so you can see I've just got, I don't know if that will focus on there, but you can see I can just cut that zigzag all the way across. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tip of my X-Acto knife and kind of lift up the tip on each one of those little scale kind of things. And once I get that tip up, I can come back with my blade and my finger and just kind of like the flat of the blade underneath that and kind of peel it up. And it kind of naturally wants to curl. You can kind of manipulate that with your fingers to get it to curl like fur if you want to. But yeah, just one more technique to try out if you're interested, creating texture on paper surface. Again, watercolor paper is great for this. So if you're interested in it, let me know. I'll get you some watercolor paper to kind of play around with. So I'm going to try to fill in that whole mask with this kind of texture. And then what I'm going to do with the outside, I'm not really sure yet. But I just want to see or show you guys what I'm working on so far. Okay? So good luck. Let me know. So remember, it's okay to start out with like one image, work into it, bring in other images as you go to figure out how you want to approach this project. All right. Have a good one.